Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 66 of the Focus on Gaming podcast. I am here, I'm Duncan, and I'm here with Tom.
How you doing?
I'm all good. And on today's episode, we're going to be, I want to say deep diving into the 3DO, but we're going to be talking about the 3DO console because, we haven't actually done retro that much recently.
No.
But yeah, so we thought we'd pick something that was a little bit more obscure. Mostly because Martin isn't here, and what we were going to do, he owned. So we'll talk about hopefully a console that he has owned next time. But yeah, the 3DO.
He's a bit young for the 3DO as well, I think.
Yes, so we thought we'd go for a bit of an older one. It's not really obscure, is it? So it's from 1993.
93, yeah.
It came out.
October 4th, 1993.
I presume it because it was an American console, wasn't it? So it probably was that in America first, was it?
So it was released September the 1st, 1994 in the EU. So I assume that means the UK as well. So didn't last very long though. It had a lifespan of just 3 years.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's start with the biggest part of I think why it failed. It's released in the US, I believe, for $600 in 1993.
Yep, $699,
which is equivalent to about $1,300 nowadays. Which, I mean, let's face it, we're all balking at the PS5 Pro being $700 and £700. I mean, $1,300 for a games console that you could only play the games. You couldn't do anything else on it.
Well,
within reason.
You could. Yeah, it did play video CDs as well.
Ooh. So imagine having a Blu-ray player and a games console in one. Oh, look, a games console.
However, you did have to buy an add-on to go into like an MPEG add-on.
So it couldn't play video CD players. CDs.
It could, but with an add-on.
So more than £1,300, plus the fact that you then had to put up with video CDs, which often films are on 2 CDs. Aren't they?
Yeah.
So in the middle, right at the worst time or something, you get a bad video CD, and it's some big epic things happening, and they go change CD. So you tell us who created it.
So it was Trip Hawkins who was involved in things like Electronic Arts. He was the founder of Electronic Arts, and he founded the 3DO company. And the idea being that he wanted to create a platform whereby many companies would buy into the 3DO brand and release consoles. Some would differ slightly, so they could tweak the inners, shall we say, but they would never pay a license on the software. Now, if anyone who's listening, and I'm sure you do know anything about the gaming industry, historically, firms would
30%.
They would never make anything on the consoles, but they'd always make on the software. But he wanted to do it a different way, and he wanted to allow them to buy into the console, but not pay a license fee on the software, and that's where they went wrong.
See, it started off with, I believe, Panasonic.
Yeah,
but they did get some big operators on there, didn't they?
Yeah, Samsung, Creative Labs, Sanyo, Gold Star, to name but a few.
Gold Star. I wonder if Gold Star is still going.
Would surprise me. Maybe
I don't think so. Oh no, I'll just look it up. Bought by. It's LG. Gold Star is LG.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, the most attractive versions of this machine were Sanyo and Panasonic. Panasonic was
the OG, wasn't it?
Yeah, the FZ-1 interactive multiplayer machine. And the good thing about that is you had slots where you could play more than 2 players. So you could, at the top of the controller that came with it was a slot for another controller. So they would like.
Oh, so they daisy chained the controllers
Yeah,
rather than having ports on the console itself.
yeah. I can't remember, and I'd have to check. But I think there may have also been a slot on the back. But certainly on the first release, you would daisy chain the controllers.
Were they bespoke? Were they 3DO connectors or were they early USB or
No, they were
something?
3DO connectors. Yeah, I mean, it was the controllers were great. The design was great. The machine
Three
was just.
button,
It
three
was
button and a D
three
pad, I think,
button.
wasn't it?
Yeah, with the cross pad. Yeah, it was just one of those machines that you knew when you had it, you had something special. It was that simple. You had
Hang
something
on.
special,
By special, do you mean special or do you mean expensive?
special and expensive. It was
It
an
had a
out.
good quality to it, did it?
Yeah, and the thing is, you could take in mind in that era. Let's set the scene a little bit. It was competing with things like the Super Nintendo, the Mega Drive, the Jaguar, the CDI
And importantly, arcades
arcades,
as well.
and it had those. I mean, it had the best version of Street Fighter 2 Turbo edition.
So we should say it's a CD console as well.
Yeah,
It was one of the earliest CD
yeah,
only.
and to be clear, it was Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo edition, and it had CD quality sound on it. But it had things like Muhammad Ali's boxing, Rogue Squadron, or some Star Wars game, which was pretty run of the mill, but it was it was generated graphics where you'd go through.
Star Wars Rebel Assault.
That's the one. And you go through this set area. I mean, you were shooting things, but it was all on rails.
It's an on-rail shooter. Yeah,
but it was fantastic. It had a 32-bit ARM 60-RISC processor, custom graphics chip, marketed as a multimedia all-in-one machine.
But let's go with the time. I'm just looking at some specs now, and obviously for the time it was amazing because you got arcade games as they were in the arcade,
megahertz,
but 12.5 megahertz.
Yeah.
So obviously, your even your slow processors now are 2 gigahertz. So they're well, 1,000 times would obviously be 12.5, so 500 times faster. Modern CPUs, and that's slow CPUs. And then 2 megabyte of RAM. Even if you have, 2 gigabyte of RAM now wouldn't even run Windows.
So specifically, it had 2 megabyte of RAM, 1 megabyte of VRAM, and 32 kilobytes of SRAM.
Yeah, the storage. 32 kilobytes. I'm not entirely sure what SRAM is, to be honest. I'm not. It's static random access memory.
Yeah.
I'm not that technical to know what that is, but VRAM is it just uses storage to supplement the storage that is like the hardware storage.
Yeah.
So even so, 3 megabyte of RAM. It's
16-bit stereo.
And the display, it could put out a display. The best display it could put out was 384 by 288.
So what bit do we think this era goes into? So the SNES was the 16-bit.
Well, it's 32-bit. It says here on the specs. So technically, it's PlayStation 1 era.
Yeah.
I don't know the actual specs of the PS1. I should get that up quick.
I think the PS1 was 32-bit because the PS2.
Well, they were definitely 32-bit.
The PS2 was 128.
Oh, I see. It just the PlayStation 1. Obviously, the PlayStation 1 came out a whole year later, but it was 33 megahertz. So just wildly faster, but the exact same amount of memory on the PlayStation.
And in fact, the 3DO was overall more powerful spec-wise. It was more capable as a machine may not have the speed, but it was more capable as a machine.
It was. I wanted one when I was little. I wanted one because it was. I said before in various episodes that I used to spend lots of time and way too much money in arcades, and I wanted to play arcade games at home, and this was one of the few things similar to the Neo Geo that you could play arcade games at home, and they were the arcade game. It wasn't a Spectrum version, which there was some good arcade ports to Spectrum and the C64 and whatnot, but to turn on your TV and have an arcade game in your home was the aim of every gamer, and 3DO did that, but they did it at a price where I went. if I even just hinted that we get that to my parents, they would have laughed for about a week.
But it was very much the yuppie console era, wasn't it? It was the CDI, the interactive thing, and then you had the 3DO, and they were the yuppie machines, and then you had the.
And they aimed at an adult. There was a lot of adult games on there that they had Alone in the Dark, things like that. So they got quite a few PC ports.
Yeah.
So Alone in the Dark and Alone in the Dark 2 were very successful horror games. I'm just looking here. They've got Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which as I was in that, a 15-year-old is not going to want Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Not to say it was entirely adult games. There's Buster Move as well. Buster Move, Cannon Fodder was absolutely fantastic on the Amiga, but you're not going to buy a 700 back in that day. Apparently it's unreleased in certain. Oh no, it's in certain areas in Japan. You're not going to buy a $700 console for a game like Cannon Fodder that you can get on an Amiga for a quarter of the price.
Yeah, we had games like D that was on there as well, which was a PC port. Fantastic game graphically at the time.
It was similar to the Seventh Guest and what's the other one? The 11th Hour.
Yeah,
I love those games, but there's a couple of them that were randomly generated, so you couldn't have guides for it, and they were really hard, especially as a child.
Wing Commander 3, which is a full motion interactive multiplayer game.
Yeah, that was Wing Commander
had £1 million budget, that game.
Well, Wing Commander came out on other platforms, but
it needed to make their money back.
It had a lot. Was number 3 the one that had Tim Curry in it, or was that 2? No, that's Command and Conquer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It had Mark Hamill though, didn't it? Wing Commander.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You had the Twisted game show. That was fun. That was by Electronic Arts. That was just a bit nuts. Wolfenstein 3D, Jurassic Park Interactive. Vivid Virtual World, which was basically pornographic.
What?
Yeah, download that. Gex, which was the largest selling game on the 3DO.
Which again, obviously, did they make it for the 3DO? Because this came out. Gex came out on this. It came out. Hang on, just looking up in 1994. So it came out on the PS1, obviously later than that, because it came out 1994 as well. So just again, why would you buy it when you could get the PlayStation 1 for $299? And that was there was the famous. It was actually a dig at Sega, wasn't it? When some CEO or something of PlayStation just came out onto stage. It was just after Saturn had announced that the Saturn was going to be Sega. They announced it was going to be $399, and people were like, "Oh my god, that's really expensive!" And he famously came out, just walked out onto stage, went 299 and walked off.
Yeah. Interestingly, Sega.
But that was also with 3DO. You know, having a dig at somebody who's selling somebody something for $400. This one's are selling it for $700. But people weren't even looking at it, in my eyes, other than gamers who couldn't afford it.
Well, yeah, interesting. Like you talk about Sega. So the CEO of Sega at the time was Tom Kalinske. He was well known for, like, I think he was involved in the Pepsi brand or the Coke brand. I can't remember. But anyway, he had serious talks with the 3DO company about Sega becoming involved with the 3DO. The only reason they decided to shelve the idea, because it was really far along, is because of the cost implications on the technology at the time. So that's why when you got things like the Mega CD and things like that, the drives were just crap and prone to failure, whereas the 3DO drives were top notch. They were like really good spec and they were expensive to produce and release. So what could have been, you know? So
yeah, I mean, he obviously wanted it to be the platform of choice. Yeah, he compared to your Sega and your PlayStation, he wanted them to be Betamax and him to be VHS.
Yeah,
and you know them to be HD TV, HD DVD, and him to be Blu-ray. Obviously, if you didn't know at that point. But yeah, there was. I don't know what he needed to. I mean, bringing the cost down was obviously a big one, but he had some big names on there. He had FIFA on there. He had Road Rash because he was the founder of EA, so he had a pretty good relationship with EA. So their games came out on 3DO,
and to be clear, FIFA on the 3DO at that time was the best version of FIFA you could buy. It had the digitized commentary. It had the panning graphics. It was
multiple camera views, detailed graphic, and more detailed graphics. But at the same time, the Mega Drive one, the Genesis, was really good for the time. I mean, I played it again recently in the last 12 months. I'm not. Yeah, it's not great. But for the time, it was really good. And I don't know how much the Mega Drive version was. Mega Drive at launch. I'm just looking it up. It 29? Was $189.99.
Oh, sorry, for the machine itself.
For the machine, and it's what's that? Less than a third, about a fifth of the price. And you could buy yourself 9 games for the Mega Drive and still have half of the cost.
The interesting one was Road Rash, because Road Rash, obviously on the Mega Drive,
was such a good game.
Was fantastic, but on the 3DO, it really did go to a different level. It was
didn't they use some kind of FMV-ish kind of graphics?
Yeah, absolutely. And you had the soundtrack was amazing, and you know, it was just an all-round really fun game to play. Same with Jurassic Park Interactive, although that was again a bit more on the rails. But
there was a lot of. It was similar to the Sega CD, really, was it? Where there was a lot of FMV usage. Yeah. There was 3D, wasn't there? There was a lot of 3D things, but it did seem to specialize in not necessarily full motion video games like Night Trap, but it would have backgrounds that were FMV and sort of Mortal Kombat style games which used realistic for the time. But the problem is going back to that resolution. The resolution. Hang on, I'll just look it up again. 320 by 240 or at 60 hertz, or 384 by 288 at 50 hertz.
In that era,
you're never going to get. In that era. But at the same time, you could you were getting cartoonish things like Toe Jam and Earl on the Mega Drive and the Genesis that looked like a cartoon, a real TV cartoon that you could play. And if you could get it on that cost, I'm going to just keep saying about the cost, Tom. I'm just going to keep saying
I fully agree with you. And the other thing that didn't help is on the launch, you had Panasonic, which was the main console. And they failed to manufacture enough supply of the console for the launch day. So essentially, most stores would get 1, maybe 2 units. And they'd sold by like the 1st November, so hitting the Christmas period, 30,000 units. And it went on to, I think it sold quite substantially at one stage. But of course, it dropped away when you had the PlayStation. And the initial lineup, I think, was about 6 games. And then it just peaked. And then you had obviously the Atari Jaguar that was getting quite a lot of interest before its release. When it was released, that stopped.
Yeah.
Very
yeah, I really want to play that. Oh dear.
And then of course you had like you said, the Sony PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, both coming out at lower prices. So it didn't last long. And then of course Trip was very quick to jump upon the successor to the 3DO, which is the M2. Now the M2 was said to be initially an add-on for the 3DO.
Okay.
That was then shelved, and it was a full-blown machine. Now you can get the 3DO machines, the beta machines, the prototypes, and they're quite sought after. They go for thousands upon thousands of pounds, and they are backwards compatible with the 3DO. There are a number of beta games that you can play on the M2, and it was said to be more powerful than the PlayStation 2. Based on the specs, I think when we've done some deep dives on these.
Looking at this is going by Wikipedia. It was a Power PC dual 66 megahertz, which, as we said, is twice the speed of the PS1. Obviously, that's a basic thing, and that's the only stat that's there. But yeah, doubling the speed. But that's in a way, this is what we've talked about with tech before. Is that tech back in the 90s and the 2000s, phones and whatnot, and this is the same with consoles. They were exciting. That they were speeding up at such a rate. It was exciting. Even the 3DO that nobody could afford that I knew. It was exciting as a gamer. Whereas now, if you brought out an arcade style console that you had at home, people would go, well, no one's going to buy that. and you just move on. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of little gadgety things, and nowadays people just go, oh, that's great, and don't really care because they're not generational jumps. And back then, your 3DO and your M2 one was would have been a generational leap.
It would have been, and had it have come out, it would have been really interesting as to where it would have gone. But interestingly, some of the 3DO technology ended up in vending machines and and Kodak machines in Japan. So. And I think they ended up also selling the graphics card, the 3DO graphics card. I assume they were taking bits of the machine, like, where can we sell this? And it became a PC release. So,
well, it's said here again, and this is Wikipedia, so don't quote me on this. The end of 1996, a release date was not yet set for the console, and third-party developers were stating that in practice. So on paper, maybe, but in practice, the M2 was not significantly more powerful than the Nintendo 64. So yeah, it sounds very much like your Ouya kind of thing for those that have remember the Ouya.
Interestingly, the graphics wise, and if you type in Google 3DO M2, and you can see some of the prototype machines, and you look at the graphics are clearly superior to the N64. That's clear.
What about between the two expensive consoles, the Neo Geo with all its 2D arcades and very fast fighting games, side-scrolling fighting games, those kind of things. The Neo Geo and the 3DO. Which would you have if you only had money for one of them?
Having owned both, I prefer the 3DO as a technology, but the Neo Geo is more fun. That's the only way I can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll also depend on what kind of games you like. Obviously, the Neo Geo is very heavily, as I said, 2D fighters, one-on-one fighters, side-scrolling fighters, side-scrolling ninja games, side-scrolling other fighting style of games. So basically, side-on 2D fighting games. But was it as expensive, the Neo Geo? I think we've looked that up before.
Neo Geo.
I don't think it was as expensive.
$799, I'm guessing.
Was it $799? Well, the first console, the Neo Geo, was it the MVS?
You would want to look at the home console version, which would be the AES.
Okay. The AES console, $650 in 1991.
I weren't far.
In 1990. So no, that's so actually that would probably it's comparable. It's comparable. But hey, the CPU, that's two CPUs, or 12 megahertz, one of them though, which is same as the 3DO. But the RAM in the Neo Geo, 64 kilobytes of RAM. So the definitely out-rammed.
And they were meant for different things. She said. Obviously, they were meant for different things. They were meant for
Well, Neo Geo was 2D arcade games, and it was it was SNK as well, who very much had a style, whereas 3DO they were trying to take over the living room, and I suppose you could say Xbox didn't learn from that with their release of the Xbox One, because don't try and take over the living room, create a gaming console, and therefore lost that round, and therefore this round of the gaming generation.
So what do we think about the legacy of 3DO brand and the machines it released? What do we think that? I mean, we know, like for instance, the CDI, that pushed forward CD media in gaming. We knew that without that, we wouldn't maybe have got as far as we did, as quick as we did with the PlayStations.
So the CDI was earlier than the 3DO, wasn't it? It was
that's right.
Early 90s.
Yeah. So what do you think the legacy was for the 3DO?
I think I would say it killed it. I would say it killed that style of the let's stick this technology in a box in your living room and everybody will sit around and play games. And I think luckily there was other things around that were very much more user friendly in terms of price and such like. That meant that it didn't kill because the problem with the early 80s, when the gaming industry nearly died forever, was that there was Atari.
Yeah.
And obviously there was lots of imports and whatnot, but it was Atari. So Atari went tits up, and that was it. It was like, oh, okay, no one else. And then Nintendo came along and went, actually, we're going to do this. So yeah, and I think now if somebody went right, I want to put an Xbox One in a Blu-ray player rather than having an Xbox One with a Blu-ray player, and so yeah, I think it killed. I think the 3DO killed that. So that's the downside.
Yeah.
I struggle to find a positive though, other than it probably helped. It was a pioneer for CD, CD audio, CD graphics, CD, like CD storage, so that you could have that, that amount of storage on a CD meant that you could have more, more storage, and that's about it. I don't think I don't think it necessarily had a positive. I don't think they should be embarrassed. It's not that kind of bad, but I don't think it necessarily had the best legacy.
I'm going to be controversial, and I'm going to say to you,
we like controversial, Tom.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to say to you, actually, it did masses for the gaming market moving on from the 3DO, because it showed everyone that was moving into the market, i.e. Sega, PlayStation, Xbox, it showed all of what not to do.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. Basically, yeah, don't try and take over. Just make a gaming console. Just make a gaming console. Don't try and I know 3DO was a gaming console, but they tried to make it like a video player, look like a video player. They tried to make it, and it also gaming. Even now in 2024, people are moaning about the PlayStation 5 Pro price, and this is why the Spectrum. I mean, the Spectrum was way underpowered compared to the C64, and yet was at least keeping up with it, or if not outsell it. I'm not entirely sure. But in this country, I think it did outsell the C64. But that's because I think it was £99 when it came out, something like that. And people love cheap. If you could do similar things, it's the Meta Quest. The Meta Quest is not as good technologically as the Apple Vision Pro or the Meta Quest Pro. But they're stopping the Meta Quest Pro because no one bought it.
Yep.
And there's, in fact, everything I hear on various tech websites is that the Apple Vision Pro is probably very low. Maybe because they're going to supersede it with something else. People want cheap. And people want cheap and quick and easy, because it's a luxury. I don't need gaming in my life. Well, I do need gaming in my life because I'll cry if I don't. But I don't need gaming. I need food. Yeah, but gaming is life. Actually, no, I tell a lie. I always tell my son, cheese is life, because I love cheese. Cheese is I love cheese.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
Well, whenever I talk to him and just say, what is life? He's like, beer and cheese.
Love it.
Anyway, so if gaming, give me cheap, but give me good. Don't give me a Game Boy nowadays, unless you go, oh, this is retro. But don't go, this is the new thing and it works like a Game Boy. It's like, no, because that's rubbish. As a retro thing, Game Boy is great. But if you say this is a new console, we're going to be making games for it, and it's rubbish, but it's $12.99. I mean, I bought a retro console about 2 years ago for my little boy. That was one of these AliExpress or Temu or something like that, and I think it was literally £1.80, And it was great for him because he could play Super Mario, but it sucked. It plastic. It felt like it was going to fall apart. Some of the versions of Mario and other games on there, number one, they were repeated. Number two, they were fake ones that had all sorts of glitches and artifacts and stuff didn't work.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to find that sweet spot, and that sweet spot between cheap and too cheap. And this is what Nintendo does very well. Nintendo does, and I think Valve have shown that with the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck was just the right amount, the cost, where everyone went, how much? I've got to have one.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to have one, and I did have to have one. But even with me, I had to use Microsoft Reward points. I think I got about £110 worth of Microsoft Reward points to get mine. But yeah, it was just that perfect price. And the Switch being, I'd say, £300, something like that. Perfect price. But
great price for what you have access to.
But equally, somebody that's technologically minded would go, yeah, the Switch is quite expensive actually for nowadays because it's a 7-year-old processor. If I bought a tablet with the same specs, but for what it does, it isn't expensive. So anyway, yeah, there you go.
See, I don't understand all the moaning about the PlayStation 5 Pro. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want one. I have zero interest in having one. My kids won't be getting one unless they get a job. And
send them down the pits.
Down the pits. But I do understand the need for it because whereby, and the same can be said for when we had the 3DO, the jump from the 16 bits of that era, is that now we have a situation where there is no technological jump, and there wasn't back then. You either went from the affordable 16-bit to the 3DO. That was the jump, and that jump was extreme. Same with the Neo. It was an extreme jump. And in order for us to go to an extreme jump now, we have to have a middle ground. We have to have a stepping stone. And the PS5 Pro is the stepping stone.
Yeah, we said this when we talked about the PS5 Pro when it was announced. The technological contents of it,
yeah,
for £700, not a problem. I haven't got a problem with that. What I've got a problem with is what we were just talking about. It's that sweet spot. It's over that sweet spot.
It doesn't hit it, does it?
It's just above it. I think if they'd gone, we can't do this because technology hasn't become cheaper like it used to. It used to be, this is a mid generation refresh, and because things have become cheaper, it's the same price as the previous one, or it's only 5% more.
Yeah.
Now it's not really happening like that anymore.
No.
The technology getting cheaper, so they've had to go, we're doing all this technology, we're plastering or ray tracing and such like in there, but we've got to charge this much. And I don't think they shouldn't charge that much, but for a console experience, I think people shouldn't pay that much. I think they should have gone for 10% less.
I strongly believe the next generation of consoles is going to hit the near £1,000 mark.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you go for generational leap, I mean, you can buy a Core i9, or they call it Core, they just call them i9s now. You can buy an i9 4090 for about £3,000.
Yeah.
With 64 gigabyte of RAM kind of thing and such like. And that will give you a massive generational leap.
Yeah.
Whereas the PS5 Pro just seems to be like, it's a little bit shinier. And you can get that for an extra £300.
Don't
want it.
Yeah. I see.
And the 3DO was the same. It was like, oh my god, I'd love to have. Well, for that, it was, and like you said, it was a generational gap. It was jumping from these 2D things that, like, the Mega Drive struggled with a lot of games.
Yeah.
That's why when Street Fighter 2 came out, everyone was surprised. Everyone was like, what? The Mega Drive could actually do that?
Mm.
And it wasn't, but no one in their right mind, unless you were very rich, and generally that was your Christian Bale, American Psycho style traders, no one could afford it. So, yeah.
I think we've hit that point with most technology now, that mobile phones are at a point now where the leap has to be extreme. And I think we are at the same with consoles. Streaming of games, I think we are at a point again where we need to have that massive leap. And we know the massive leap is going to come with the Xbox handheld. We know that's where the leap's going to come in. Now, I'm not talking a technological leap. I'm talking a leap,
function,
a functional leap. Yeah. I think with phones, the leap will come when Apple shelves the iPad Mini and turns the iPhone into an iPhone Fold, which will then have the iPad Mini and iPhone in one device.
Do you think they'll do a flip device?
Yes, 100%. 100%. You wait till probably not next year, I'd say the year after, and I strongly believe they'll shelve the 11-inch or the iPad Mini, and they'll have a foldable phone that will become. It will be, and I mark my words, this is how they'll describe it. It is an iPhone and an iPad in one. When you want the use of the iPhone, you have it. When you open it up, it becomes an iPad. That is how they're going to market that. I guarantee it. So,
yeah, I mean, the iPad Mini when it came out was one of these generational things. It was like, it's just this small thing. How do you fit all that, like the fast processor and such, like in this small? And people expected a small tablet to be slow. And generally the rule was, if you bought a big tablet, it was fast. If you bought a little tablet, it was slow. And then they brought out this iPad Mini that was like really fast and reactive. And so if they have an iPhone that for some reason people love, that is also a super reactive iPad Mini, which do they still do? They don't do an iPad Mini anymore.
Yeah, they've just released a new model last week.
Have they? Oh, I stand corrected then. If it could be both in one. I mean, somebody like me, like my chosen career, I'm going to need a phone and a tablet soon. So a folding one that works well and such. I'll be looking at that. But I still wouldn't want to get back in. I have had an iPhone, so I'm not just one of these people who's like, ooh. I had the iPhone 4, and I went to Android, and never again, probably.
My last iPhone was probably the iPhone 4, and
because see that in a form thing, that was a generational leap as well. That went from a plasticky thing with a great for the time screen and touch screen, capacitive and all this, to a really hefty, like heavy, not heavy, but felt really strong metal phone with a glass screen, and it was fantastic. Loved it. I absolutely loved the technology behind it. But then I realised that they didn't want me to go anywhere else, and so I went somewhere else and never looked back. Although there was one game. I can't remember what it was called, but I actually went through about 10 pages of purchases on my Apple account about 5 months ago. I found it. It was a 2D tower defense game.
I remember. Yeah.
It was almost like a roguelite game. I can't remember. It was it was like a fantasy one. So you started at the bottom of the screen, and you had to put all the enemies did, and they came up, and you had to place people on the 2D screen and yeah, I can't remember what it's called. Ari, want to know what it's called?
I remember. I know what game you mean, but I can't remember the name. I know what you mean.
I think I might have mentioned it on the previous episode, but yeah. Anyway, God, what are we talking about?
Generational leaps.
Generational leaps.
Yeah.
Well, relating to the 3DO, I think it was, but I'll say it again. I've said it once or twice. They killed it by making it too expensive. Did any of the like the Samsung or the Gold Star or anything like that bring out any cheaper version?
Yeah, there was one for, I think it was either $299 or $399, and that was the Sanyo or the Gold Star off the top of my head. But it made no difference. It was too late by that point, so it was a top loader. And it didn't really have any impact. So I think they got to the stage where they just run its course. But you got to remember, the 3DO was only around for 3 years.
Blimey. I'm just looking up Wikipedia again. In January 1996, the 3DO company sold exclusive rights to its next generation console, the M2, to Matsushita for, I tell you what, it's in the millions. Guess how much?
50 million.
Nope. Double it.
100 mil.
100 million. In 1996, 100 million.
That's how good.
My goodness, that is crazy.
And that shows how good the tech that they had was.
Yeah, I mean, Matsushita were they were Panasonic, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Panasonic basically went, oh well, we've already made it. We might as well buy the technology. So
yeah.
Okay.
And then they did nothing with it.
Well, it's probably one of these things that they nowadays a lot of the technology is sold and never used because it's similar to other tech and it's patents. That's the word I'm looking for. People don't buy things to use them. They just use the patents that are associated with them. It might be putting in a processor in a certain way or a way of how the processor and the software work together. Things like, you've got your big companies like Oracle and IBM and such like that. A lot of what they do is just they've created a tiny little thing that every version of Windows uses or something like that. And that means they make 500 million a year just from that one tiny little thing because they earn 10 cents for every sale of Windows or something like that.
Yeah. It may well have gone into their Laser Active brand because take in mind that they had the Laserdisc players and some of those had the technology to play games, from Mega Drive to Neo Geo to TurboGrafx, and laser active games as well, interactive games like Dragon's Lair and Mad Dog McCree and stuff like that.
This is nothing to do with actually what we're talking about. There was something that I didn't know if you'd seen. The was it the Analog 3D? Have you seen that?
I haven't.
It's basically a fully engineered N64 cartridge playing.
Yes,
console.
sorry, no, I did see it. Yes.
It looks like a beautiful thing, and it's the thing that makes me go, "Ooh, that looks good," is the fact that it hasn't got the N64 controller. That was a terrible controller. I don't care what anybody says; it was awful.
So was the machine.
Wasn't didn't they try and make it so that you could plug 2 controllers in and use both sticks on 2 controllers?
Wasn't that with? Wasn't that one that used the Game Boy Advance? Or am I thinking of something else?
I don't know, but I'm sure there was either a game or Nintendo wanted it so that you could plug 2 controls in, and that means you'd have the dual analog sticks. So obviously they just whacked an analog stick in the middle of a controller, and yeah, I don't know. It was very much a controller designed by an 8-year-old boy, wasn't it? I worst controller ever. Hated it. But anyway, the analog 3D has a very much like a almost an 8-bit do, whatever they're called. Or what's the word? Nintendo Pro, the Switch Pro controller. It looks similar to, but only one analog stick. Yeah. So. But yeah, it looks great, and it plays original cartridges, so great fun. It just means that you can play them. There's no emulation; it's all hardware based. So the fact that you can plug it into HDMI and whatnot, so you don't need any adapters or anything like that. If you got one, yeah. Do you start on N64?
No, I never liked them in the first place.
No,
no.
Well,
I wasn't a fan.
I was a PS1.
Yeah, I was. I've got the N64 Mario. With like the Mario 64, and that was the set that came on the Switch. But I play it, and I just don't like it. I've kept it because I think it's going to become quite rare in the future. But I just don't like it. I thought
Mario 64. I much prefer the 2D ones.
Yeah,
I much prefer them.
I'm just not a fan of them at all.
It's if you like it, great. It's not a terrible game. It doesn't excite me.
No, I'm with you.
But Super Mario World, fantastic game, absolutely amazing game.
Yeah,
We've done Mario before.
We've done that. We won't go over that old crap.
But yeah, so I suppose that's the news thing, really. Then the analog 64. It's coming out as $250.
I really do want an analog pocket as well, which is the Game Boy one.
Yeah, I have held one of them. The build quality is fantastic. They are they do very good quality consoles. And I think as they sell it, it doesn't play ROMs, does it? But it's quite easy to make it play ROMs.
It does now.
Oh, it does play ROMs now.
Yeah,
okay.
You can download the cores, and you can load on ROMs. Or
what uses RetroArch or something?
Yeah, or you can use the original cartridges. But yeah, I mean, it does everything up to about PlayStation 1, maybe. I think, but to be honest with you, I just like the idea that you can add all your ROMs on there for different things, or you can play the original cartridges, and I think that's lovely.
They are. See, Analog do these great consoles that are good quality, and then they're more expensive than your Anbernics and your Retroids, but they have a good build quality, and they work really well. But they're not. Then it's that that sweet spot, isn't it? They're at the top end of the sweet spot, so they're still really good. They're not 3DO. Going back to our original subject, but if you want they're like the Ferrari of ROMs and emulation, aren't they? Of retro, they're the Ferrari of retro.
Yeah,
they're great. I mean, don't get me wrong, Anbernic. I've got the RG35XXH. And my boy absolutely loves it. Calls it his mini Steam Deck because it's sideways, horizontal, almost like a Game Boy Advance style, with dual analog sticks. Can emulate up to and including Dreamcast. It's great. I love it, and you can get that for I think 60 quid. You could probably get it cheaper off. Doesn't TikTok do shops and stuff? I don't have TikTok.
Always, I never trust them. No, that's the problem.
No, that's the thing. It's a bit like early AliExpress when you sort of. I mean, you still probably get only about 90% of what you order, but early AliExpress and Temu and all that, yeah, when you ordered and you had a 50-50 chance of getting it. Yeah, I love my Anbanic. It's great. I mean, I can sit there and play Crazy Taxi on a machine that has a battery that will last for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas my Steam Deck, even if I'm doing something like NES emulation, would probably last 4 hours, kind of thing. Mostly because it's a brighter, bigger screen. Yeah. So, are we done with the 3DO? I think we are done with the 3DO.
I think we've well and truly done it.
We've ripped it to shreds. Trip Hawkins will be quaking in his probably multi-million-dollar house in America. Yeah.
So go on eBay, go and buy one, try it out, and then sell it and move on.
Yeah, or definitely don't emulate it for quite easily. Should we do a bit of news? There wasn't much this week, so hence why we've gone to 3DO. But this is the week that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 comes out.
Oh yes.
So that I will review the campaign next week because I will play it. It comes out on Game Pass and I have Ultimate. But the good news for our co-host Martin is that they are allowing streaming of Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 6, and Warzone on Xbox Cloud Gaming. So, so that's because I think we're going back to when Modern Warfare 3 came out on Game Pass, which I think was about 4 or 5 months ago. Martin was very disappointed because he wanted to play with a friend of his and he couldn't because it wasn't available on cloud. Now, what it was is that when they bought it, one of the things that the Monopoly people said was that they didn't want Xbox or Microsoft to have a monopoly on cloud gaming, so they had to spin off the cloud gaming of Call of Duty. And so it's basically Ubisoft, I think. So they had to, I presume this is part of they've come to a deal with Ubisoft. How it works, I don't know. But yeah, so as of October the 25th, you will be able to play Modern Warfare 3, Warzone, and Black Ops 6 via the Xbox Cloud, but only if you have Xbox. Was it Xbox Game? No. Yeah, Game Pass Ultimate. So it wouldn't be Xbox. Yeah, just Game Pass Ultimate.
I think in the news we also had that PlayStation announced the sales of the PSVR 2.
Oh, yeah.
I think I saw that. So let's have a look. I think it's quite low.
Well, yeah, I mean, it hasn't really... hasn't really lit everything up. And even they reduced the price, which had a boost in sales, but...
Yeah, 300,000. There we go.
Ooh, that's really not good, seeing as PS5 has sold so well.
I think the PSVR 1 sold just short of 1 million units in the first 5 months.
Oh, the first 5 months.
So, but again, it's not at that price point, is it? Let's face it.
It doubles the price of the console. More than doubles the price of your console.
Yeah.
They have reduced the price to from $550 to $350, and I think there was a note, Sherlock, that when they reduced the price, sales went up by 2,000 pen. apparently.
Oh.
That was, I want to say sometime in the summer.
Yeah.
And it was like, of course it did, because it was really expensive. And again, the technology was fine. The technology was worth $500.
Mm.
But people don't want to pay $500 for a console, $500 for the headset, and then you've got controllers and games and such. Like people just want to go, I bought this, I want to play.
There are rumours that they are looking at releasing a wireless version that has a game store attached to it, whereby you can download games and play them wirelessly without having the PlayStation. But then if you get the PlayStation, you can play the AAA games as well. So that is a rumor that's sort of been around for a few months. So that would be interesting. So they would be essentially competing with.
I could just see it there now. Yeah. We heard that you wanted a wireless one. Excellent. It's £1,200.
Yeah.
No, I think I'll stick with the wired one, thanks. And anyone who hasn't got it will be like, yeah, I'm still not getting that. Just get Quest 3S.
Quest
if
3.
you want, if you want a VR headset, get the Quest 3S. Get a PC, and even nowadays, even some basic Steam VR stuff could work on the laptop or older PCs.
Yeah.
Yes, you're not going to be able to play Half-Life Alyx on a 8-year-old PC, but a lot of Steam VR games are very low powered, and
that is true. Well, I think we have come to the end of this episode.
That's an hour. That's an hour we've wrangled out of of the 3DO.
Yep.
So hopefully we'll have Martin back for another episode, and because
you do realise that this episode is almost as long as the career of the 3DO.
We've easily outlived it.
Yeah,
3 years. 3 years.
So drop us a like, share the episode.
And all of our episodes are back now after the archive.org issues. So if you want to listen to previous ones, go to focusongaming.co.uk and like, subscribe, and leave us a review.
See you next week.
On that note,
Goodbye.
bye.